Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week we had another All Modern Masters 2017 Against the Odds poll, and in the end we had kind of a blowout winner. It was Zur the Enchanter just trampling over the competition. So this week we are heading to Modern to play a deck I'm calling Zur-an, built around Zur the Enchanter. A quick reminder before we break down the deck. If you enjoy Against the Odds and the other series here on the channel, it would be amazing of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you want to vote for the next Against the Odds deck, make sure to follow the link in the description to the article on the website. Down at the bottom, you'll find a poll for next week's episode. Anyway, let's talk Zur-an in Modern. So, when I knew that Zur the Enchanter was going to be the winning card on our poll, it actually took me a few different builds to find one that I like. So Zur has a semi-real deck in Modern, which is kind of an Esper control deck that uses Zur to get some enchantments and removal and kind of ghostly prisons and things like that. I didn't want to be that exact build. It's not like a tier 1 deck or even a tier 2 deck or even a tier 3 deck, but it is like somewhat known. So my first take on Zur was like a straight up prison deck, searching out ghostly prisons and ways to like mana screw the opponent and spreading seas and just going like all in on the prison element. And I decided like that was pretty sweet, but not as sweet as we could get. Then I tried like this aggro Zur deck that was searching up any aggressive enchantment creatures from Theros box, so Master of Feast and Spirit of the Labyrinth, things like that. So I can search up big things, and that didn't work the way I wanted to. Master of Feast has a pretty big downside and it wasn't working. So I went back to the drawing board, started researching and looking into Zur, and then I realized we have the perfect card to go with Zur, and that is Doran the Siege Tower. So this might not seem obvious, but Doran is the card that lets us play an aggro version of Zur the Enchanter without having to play Master of Feast and other cards that just have these massive downsides. So Doran not only makes Zur into a really big threat in its own, because it lets everything attack equal to its toughness instead of its power. So Zur is essentially a 4/4 flyer for 4 mana, which is pretty on curve, and it has the upside of tutoring things out of our deck. Doran the Siege Tower is a 0/5, but it attacks for 5 because of its own ability. So once we got to the Doran plan, things became super sweet, and the deck became super awesome. So what are we doing with Zur? And the main idea is to search out enchantment creatures, but instead of searching out enchantment creatures that are kind of bad, like Master of Feast, we get to search out good ones. So we have Courser of Krufix, which is just a really powerful card. It's a 2/4, but technically it's a 4/4 once we have our Doran out. It helps us draw better by playing lands off the top of our deck, gains us some life. Nyx Fleece Ram is just a 5/5 for 2 mana when we have our Doran. Also gains us some life, so we're naturally really good against aggro decks because we're great at blocking and we have this incidental life gain, so Zoo and Burn and anything like that we're just really set up for. And then Aetherios is just a one of tutor target, but if you think about it, Zur has 2 white or black mana symbols. Then our Doran has 2 white or black mana symbols. Aetherios itself has 2 white or black mana symbols, so that's 6 devotion right there once we have our combo set up. So all we need is 1 other white or black mana symbol, and we have a 5/4 that can generate some value, kind of protects our creatures by getting them back when they die, potentially. And then, the big revelation is Zur the Enchanter not only works well with Doran, but it can be a Doran with Assault Formation. So one of the sweetest things we can do with this deck is play a bunch of random 0 power creatures, like Nyx Fleece Rams. Courser, I guess, has power, but Courser. Play a Zur, we swing with everything, all of our 0 powered stuff, and then when we tutor with Zur, which triggers when we attack, so before damage is dealt, we search out an Assault Formation, and we have have everything deal damage equal to its toughness and just blow out our opponent out of nowhere. So Assault Formation's a tutorable version of Doran that we can search out with Zur, so we have a lot of redundancy with that effect. And then we have some other targets that don't directly work with the Doran Zur plan, the Zur-an plan, but they're just good value cards. So Greater Oromancy protects our stuff. Our Courser of Krufus, our Nyx Fleece Ram, and our other enchantments all become shrouded, so our opponent can't target them with removal. Elan Umbra protects our Zur or our Doran because it's totem armor. Also double protection if we have Greater Oromancy because of Shroud. And then Detention Sphere is a removal spell that we can tutor out with our Zur, so that's kind of the rest of our Zur package. Then we have a few cards that work more with the Doran plan. Spellskite, we can't tutor it out because it's not an enchantment. However, it's super good in this deck. It protects our Zur, protects our Doran, and it's a 4/4 when we have a Doran or an Assault Formation out. Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch are mostly for ramping into our Doran on turn 2, our Zur on turn 3, but they also become 1/1 attackers once we have a Doran or Assault Formation on the battlefield. And then the rest of the main deck is just some good interactive cards. Fatal Push, Path to Exile to deal with our opponent's creatures, kill their blockers, attackers. Inquisition helps against combo decks, gives us something to do on turn 1 when we don't have a Birds of Paradise. In the mana base are 2 special lands, I guess. Our Gavany Township as a one-of, lets us make our creatures even bigger, and Ghost Quarter just to hedge against creature lands and Tron in the main deck. And then we have a bunch of different fetch lands, and then a bunch of shock lands and forests, not showing all of them, but we have like every color of Shockland in 4 different kinds of basics. In the sideboard, we get some more general good stuff. Path to Exile for removal, Thoughtseize for combo and control decks, Negate also for combo and control, and then the rest of our sideboard is dedicated to powerful enchantments that we can tutor out with our Zur. So Rest in Peace for graveyard decks, Stony Silence for Affinity and Tron, Spreading Seas primarily for Tron, can also come in against various creature land type decks. Then we have Eidolon of Rhetoric for Storm, Ruined Halo and Nevermore, mostly for combo-based decks. We can keep our opponent from casting their Scapeshift or their Lightning Storm or whatever combo card they're looking to kill us with. And then Phyrexian Arena is more for controlling matchups, tutored up, repeatable card advantage every single turn. And the nice thing about these cards is we can kind of get away with playing them as 1-ofs and 2-ofs, but still finding them consistently because we have the 4 Zurs that can tutor them out. So we can bring them in the matchups where they're relevant, and then usually have access to them thanks to Zur's tutoring power. And that is Zur-an for Modern, and that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. So I'm really excited for this one. The Doran Zur synergy seems really sweet. We have some really good tutor targets. We're very set up to beat any sort of aggressive decks just with our natural deck construction, and we have the tools to fight against a lot of different kinds of decks thanks to Zur and our crazy sideboard plan of having so many different enchantments. We really have a lot of bases covered. We can sideboard out our removal for specific hate cards and Thought Seizes against combo and control. We can sideboard in more removal against aggressive decks. Not that we need to, since Nyx Fleece Ram and Courser and Spellskite and Doran are just so good against aggro anyway. So I think this deck could actually work and actually be really successful. So I'm really excited to give it a try. This deck, I think it's going to be actually pretty decent. So anyway, that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. Like I said before, if you want to vote for next week's deck, follow the link in the description to the article on the site. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon.